Many people forget just how recently Britain's mining industry wound down, and one place more than any in the area has a heritage worth celebrating. Chatterley Whitfield is the most complete deep mine site in the whole of Europe and lies on the edge of the massive conurbation of Stoke-on-Trent, which follows a ridge of high land overlying the main part of the North Staffordshire coalfield. Here it was not lead that was mined, but coal, the mineral that powered the furnaces of industry. For centuries, coal has been extracted from here to great profit and fortune. We know for certain that coal had been mined from Chatterley Whitfield since at least 1750, and local tradition tells the area may well have been first mined by the monks of the nearby Halton Abbey in the 13th century. From 1750, the site grew not only in terms of size, but also in output. In 1937, it became the first colliery in Britain to mine 1 million saleable tonnes of coal in a year. None of this is ancient history, and the social impact of both mining and industrial progress was huge. By the late 19th century, millions of people who had left their rural homes were living in crowded terrace streets blackened by the smog of industry. The condition of many of the major industrial cities up until the end of the 20th century was shocking, and no writer summarised it better than Charles Dickens in his novel The Old Curiosity Shop, which expressed the horror he witnessed when travelling through the industrial Midlands.
Advancing more and more into the shadow of this mournful place, its dark, depressing influence stole upon their spirits and filled them with a dismal gloom. On every side, and as far as the eye could see into the heavy distance, tall chimneys crowding on each other and presenting that endless repetition of the same dull, ugly form, which is the horror of oppressive dreams, poured out their plague of smoke, obscured the light, and made foul the melancholy air. On mounds of ashes by the wayside, sheltered only by a few rough boards or rotten penthouse roofs, strange engines spun and writhed like tortured creatures, clanking their iron chains, shrieking in their rapid whirl from time to time, as though in torment unendurable, and making the ground tremble with their agonies. Dismantled houses here and there appeared, tottering to the earth, propped up by fragments of others that had fallen down, unroofed, windowless, blackened, desolate, but yet inhabited.
Throughout the 18th, 19th and early 20th centuries, Chatterley Whitfield prospered, as can be seen from the huge number of shafts and buildings on the site. But unfortunately, in the 1950s, cheap supplies of coal from Asia and Africa flooded the market and the price began to decline. Added to this were the rising costs of mineral extraction and the replacement of what was becoming antiquated machinery. The last coal was drawn from Chatterley Whitfield on Friday, March the 25th, 1977. But having over 200 years of mining history in the form of a whole suite of impressive buildings, not just headstocks but bath, lamp rooms and processing sites, it was opened as Britain's first underground mining museum to great success. Many of the former miners were re-employed, and 700,000 visitors a year descended over 700 feet to see coal mining techniques in action. Many did not realise this was just a small fraction of the underground workings, which extended for over 50 miles and reached down almost 2,000 feet into the bowels of the earth. The colliery was linked to another major mine, the Woolstanton Colliery, by a 4-kilometre underground routeway. Woolstanton, being over 3,000 foot in depth, had pumps which drained all the water from the area to allow the lower seams of coal to be worked. Unfortunately, Woolstanton shut in 1981, and after salvage operations concluded, the pumps were turned off in 1984. This would have spelled doom for Chatterley Whitfield were it not for the British Coal Board stepping in and helping to seal the shafts and excavate a new underground mining experience. But the museum's future was not secure, and rising costs led to its closure on Monday the 9th of August 1993. A number of major initiatives were set up to try and save the site, but sadly each one appears to have led nowhere, and the mine lies abandoned, crumbling where it stands. A single Heritage Open Day is now run each year by the Friends of Chatterley Whitfield, but with the structures becoming increasingly unstable, it's only a matter of time before these two end. If any site in the country deserves an injection of government money and a restoration for the nation, it is here, the most important mining site in the whole of Britain. Today the whole area is a scheduled ancient monument, with 5 buildings being given Grade 2 listed status. But not all of the Staffordshire Moorlands mining heritage has fared so badly. The money from many industrial ventures was used to create things of great beauty, from houses and museums to statues and monuments, all in some way designed to display the owner's wealth. On the edge of the North Staffordshire coalfield, nestled between wooded valleys and high hills, is the most beautiful example in the region, Biddulph Grange, without a doubt the finest surviving Victorian garden in England. Over 15 acres transport you around the world, from Egypt to China and Scotland to Italy. Thickly planted shrubberies and huge mounds of stone and earth separate each distinct garden, and the experience is heightened even more by tunnels and winding pathways. Stocked by some of the Victorian era's greatest plant hunters, Biddulph Grange was the grand vision of the eccentric industrialist James Bateman. A man of strong conviction and an obsessive passion for flora, he designed the gardens between 1849 and 1864. Bateman's amassed wealth, which enabled the garden's construction, can be traced back to his grandfather, who made the family fortune by wisely investing in the new technology of steam engines. Added onto this, the family had a large mining and steel-making monopoly in Stoke-on-Trent. James Bateman grew up at Knipersley Hall, a short distance from Biddulph, where as a teenager he cultivated tropical fruits and orchids in an amazing series of hothouses. The young Bateman, in surviving documents, described himself as being infected by the orchids mania which now pervades all. Being impatient with the slow rate at which new species crossed the seas, he began to finance and dispatch his own plant hunters who scoured the tropical jungles and cloud forests for a plethora of extravagant new plants. In 1883, Bateman was a student at Oxford University and began an endeavour which was to firmly establish his reputation as one of the nation's leading botanists. The Orchidaceae of Mexico and Guatemala was to be the largest botanical book ever produced. So expensive was its printing that only 125 copies were made, and to own one truly endowed you with the prestige of belonging to the upper echelons of the aristocracy. It also gave him a calling card into much of high society, meeting and exchanging plants with the likes of the Duke of Devonshire and other leading figures. Bateman moved to Biddulph Grange in around 1840, and with the aid of his friend and painter Edward William Cooke set about designing his grand vision. But Bateman's plans did not just include the living plants. In order to gain entry to the gardens you had to pass through his amazing geological gallery. But the gallery was not what you may have expected. Organised into 7 days, it was Bateman's way of trying to reconcile his strong religious beliefs with the newly developing field of geology. Bateman was, as with a lot of his peers, a believer in the Genesis narrative, a doctrine of creation as outlined in the Old Testament. However, advancements in science meant that literal understanding of the 7 days of creation could no longer be believed, considering the massive sequences of rock and the processes that had created them. William Buckland, a leading doctor of divinity, explained that the 7 days of creation were indeed represented in the rock strata. Each day ended with a cataclysmic event, which wiped out the creatures of the past and then resulted in the birth of a whole new series. This is what Bateman was trying to illustrate in his geological gallery. But, as a miner, he had a considerable geological understanding. His father John also having established a fantastic fossil collection. He must have been torn apart by his understanding and his faith, and we will never know if it was truly reconciled. Bateman's beliefs caused him to lock horns with one of the greatest scientists of all time, Charles Darwin, with whom he exchanged not only orchids, but a number of new scientific ideas, as can be seen in this response letter to Darwin written in 1862.
Pray forgive my godless carelessness in omitting the names. When I charged him with the misdemeanour, he defended himself on the ground that he could never have supposed you could have been ignorant of them. I am sorry to say that my knowledge of orchids almost ends where yours, according to your own modest representation, would seem to begin, i.e., I know them much better systematically and structurally. Indeed, even as a young man, my eyes were too weak to bear the strain of the microscope, without which nothing, of course, could be done. I much wish you would take up the subject of the marvellous changes, I might almost call them metempsychosis, to which orchids are prone. Though by no means a convert to your theory as to the origin of a species, I wish the matter to be thoroughly ventilated, and cannot but think that facts of great significance may be gathered in the direction I have indicated. If you put me in the witness box, I shall be happy to tell all I know.
Bateman was to come out on the losing side, and if that was not enough to ostracise many of his peers, his crippling debts were the final straw. He had invested so much of his money into his vision for Biddulph Grange that his loans became too much, with over £35,000 owed on his mortgage. That's £1.5 million in today's money. In 1869 he was forced to put his house and beloved gardens up for sale, which were purchased in 1871 by Robert Heath, another industrialist and MP. Using the little money he had left over, Bateman moved to a much smaller house in Kensington, where he spent the rest of his life. Robert Heath took great care of the gardens and used to take pride in showing visitors around, until another disaster fell in 1896 when the vast majority of the house burned down. The architect Thomas Bower was to rebuild it, but shortly after its completion the First World War broke out and the house had to be quickly converted into a children's hospital, with large parts of the estate being sold off separately. The garden fell into disrepair. Walls began to shift and crumble. Delicate plants were left untended and were outcompeted. Flowers no longer bloomed and the trees began to die. But the story was to have a happy ending. On the very brink of its destruction, the value of the now ruinous gardens was spotted by the National Trust, who purchased them in 1988. An immense restoration project still undergoing has returned the gardens to Bateman's glory days. Now Grade 1 listed, this true echelon of high Victorian gardening can be experienced by all.